Imagine moving into what you thought was the perfect suburban neighborhood. Neat lawns, kids riding bikes, friendly barbecues on weekends. Now imagine that very same dream turning into a nightmare because of one woman, Nancy, the self-crowned queen of the HOA. She wasn't just a Karen, she was Karen with a badge, clipboard, and a superiority complex the size of Texas. She believed she had the divine right to control every detail of our lives, from the shade of your mailbox to the sound of your car engine. And that, my friend, is where this chaos began. Welcome to HOA Karen Chronicles. Comment which country you're watching from. Let's see how far this story goes. I'm John. I had just moved here a few weeks ago, thinking I'd found peace and quiet. Wrong. Everything was fine except for Nancy, the self-appointed eco-warrior Karen. She fined people for leaving their trash cans out 2 minutes late. She yelled at kids for drawing chalk on the sidewalk. And when it came to cars, she went nuclear. At an HOA meeting, Nancy strutted in with her stack of recycled paper notes and declared, "From now on, no gas-powered vehicles in my neighborhood. They're destroying the atmosphere." The room went dead silent. Most residents stared at her like she'd lost her last marble. A few rolled their eyes. Then chaos broke out. People shouted over each other, slamming their fists on tables, calling the idea insane. "You can't ban gas cars. That's not even legal," one man barked. Another woman stood and screamed, "We'll sue if this goes through." The protest was loud, heated, and unanimous. Nobody wanted this nonsense. But somehow, against every voice of reason, the puppet HOA board still nodded like obedient bobbleheads. They passed it anyway. And suddenly, Nancy's delusion became law in our neighborhood. Families were devastated. Some neighbors had to dump their cars, some sold them for pennies, and some couldn't afford electric ones at all. Me? Oh, I wasn't playing that game. My gas-powered car stayed in the driveway, polished and running smooth. That decision lit a fuse under Nancy. The next day, she called the police, ranting about environmental terrorism, disorderly conduct, and some other garbage laws she probably Googled at 2 a.m. The cops actually showed up and towed my car away while she watched with that smug grin only Karens can master. When the tow truck rolled away with my car chained up like a captured criminal, I swear Nancy almost broke into a happy dance. She stood there in her neon green Save the Earth t-shirt, waving at me like she'd just banished Satan from the neighborhood. I wanted to laugh at how ridiculous she looked, but my blood was boiling. The cops weren't exactly thrilled to be there either. One officer whispered, "Man, this is the dumbest call I've had all week," before handing me a slip that listed the charges: disorderly conduct, environmental pollution, and get this, reckless contribution to global warming. I almost asked him if Nancy had written it herself. That night, I called my lawyer, Dan. He's sharp, sarcastic, and the kind of guy who could roast you in court while sipping a latte. When I told him what happened, he laughed so hard I thought he'd choke. Then he got serious. "John, this isn't just dumb, it's illegal. No HOA can override state or federal law like that. You've got the Clean Air Act on your side, plus the Federal Energy Policy and Conservation Act, and don't forget the consumer protection laws. These clowns don't have a leg to stand on." Armed with that confidence, I told him, "Dan, let's nuke this whole circus." The very next morning, I showed up at another HOA meeting. Everyone was buzzing. Nancy had already started bragging about cleaning the neighborhood of pollution like she'd won a Nobel Prize. When she saw me stroll in, her smile dropped faster than the stock market in '08. I announced loud enough for the whole room, "I'll be seeing you in court." The gasps were delicious. Nancy tried to clap back with her usual Karen screech, "You can't fight progress, John." But even some of the neighbors who used to ignore me started cheering. One old man yelled, "About time someone stood up to this nonsense." Her smug empire was cracking, and she knew it. If you're enjoying the story so far, don't forget to like and subscribe. Court day came faster than Nancy could rehearse her fake eco-activist speeches. She showed up in a ridiculous outfit, flowing green scarf, solar panel earrings, and a binder so thick it could stop a bullet. She strutted into the courtroom like she was about to argue in front of the United Nations, not a county judge who looked like he'd rather be fishing. My lawyer, Dan, leaned over and whispered, "Relax, this is going to be easier than microwaving popcorn." The judge opened the session with a sharp tone. "We are here because the Homeowners Association allegedly passed a law banning gas-powered cars. Let's be clear, this is the most absurd case I've seen in years." He rubbed his temples like he was regretting his career choices. Nancy sprang up, her voice shrill enough to break glass. "Your Honor, Gas vehicles are a crime against humanity. They pollute, they endanger children, and they threaten our planet. She slapped her binder dramatically on the table, scattering papers like confetti. Dan stood calmly, adjusted his tie, and said, "With all due respect, Judge, my client has been fined, harassed, and had his property stolen on the basis of rules that directly violate state and federal protections. The HOA doesn't have the authority to pass laws that supersede the Clean Air Act, the Federal Energy Policy and Conservation Act, or consumer protection standards. This is not activism, it's tyranny with a picket fence." The courtroom chuckled. Even the bailiff smirked. Nancy tried to interrupt, but the judge silenced her with one raised hand. "Mrs. Nancy, sit down. You don't get to make up laws. This is America, not your personal kingdom." The tension was delicious. I could see beads of sweat forming under her mountain of foundation makeup. Every time she tried to object, the judge shut her down harder. By the end, it was obvious to everyone in the room, Nancy's little eco-dictatorship was crumbling faster than stale cookies. The ruling hadn't come yet, but the writing was on the wall, and oh boy, I was ready for the fireworks. The courtroom went dead silent as the judge leaned back in his chair, glaring over his glasses like a disappointed father. "After reviewing the evidence, I find this entire HOA regulation unlawful, baseless, and downright ridiculous. Mr. John, your car will be returned immediately. As for you, Mrs. Nancy," he paused, letting the suspense simmer, "you will be fined for abuse of authority, filing false police reports, and violating your neighbor's rights. Furthermore, the HOA board that supported this nonsense will face penalties as well." Nancy's face twisted like she'd just bitten into a lemon soaked in vinegar. She screeched, "You can't do this to me. I was protecting the planet." The judge slammed his gavel so hard the sound echoed through the chamber. "This court isn't here to feed your ego, Mrs. Nancy. It's here to enforce the law." My lawyer smirked and whispered, "And that's checkmate." But the humiliation didn't stop there. The local news picked up the story. HOA Karen tries to ban gas cars, gets slapped down in court. Reporters swarmed her lawn, cameras rolling as neighbors shouted things like, "Hey Nancy, how's your dictatorship going?" Someone even spray painted "Queen of Nothing" on her precious eco-friendly compost bin. Then came the final nail in the coffin, a recall vote. The very same neighbors she tormented, families she fined, kids she scolded, folks she tried to bully, showed up in droves. When the ballots were counted, she was officially booted from the HOA board. Gone. Finished. Evicted from power. And the cherry on top? The court ordered her to personally pay my legal fees plus damages. Watching Nancy hand over that check with trembling hands was like sipping the sweetest cup of coffee on a cold morning. Her reign was over, and the neighborhood finally breathed free again, both gas and electric cars parked proudly side by side. The end. Please like and subscribe for more HOA showdowns like this. Have you had a similar encounter with a Karen HOA or anyone in the HOA board? Let us know in the comments.